Good evening. Let me try that again. Good evening. Thank you so much. Welcome to FIT. Are you excited to be at FIT? Yes? Great. I'm the brand new president, 6 months in, Jason Schubach. Welcome. So excited that you're here. And that's a clap line, new presidents. We are so grateful to be hosting this event tonight. Thank you so much. Give it up for our incredible Manhattan Borough President, Brad. Thank you so much for bringing us together tonight. We have such an impressive group of experts for you all, talking about one of our most important projects in the city. You know, Penn Station is just a few blocks away. It brings our students, our faculty, and industry leaders to our doorstep here every single day at FIT, so we care about it a little bit. Before we get started, though, can I just brag on FIT for 2 seconds? Is that okay? Yes? Yes? Good. Okay. Did you know that FIT is the only publicly funded creative college in the country located in a world cultural capital? The best city in the world, New York City. How awesome is that? You know, just this year, Vogue named FIT one of the best fashion schools in the world. It was the only other one in the United States except for this other one down the street, Parsons. You know, I've heard of them. They're only 10 times more expensive than us. It's fine. We are actually, did you know that FIT is actually a community college with a 2-year, 4-year, and master's degree programs? And we offer so much more than fashion. We offer programs. We have 50 different degree programs. Our biggest school is actually our business school. We have programs in video games. We have the world's top toy design program, the most important fragrance and beauty programs, supply chain management, international trade. Anybody think anything's going on with that right now? On and on and on. We do so much more. This is really your school. We are a public school. We are a member of the SUNY system. Who knew that? Great, thank you. So what does that mean? We are your creative institution that you invest in for those industries in this city. And that investment makes us incredibly affordable to your community. We are only $3,500 a semester. That's a clap line. Thank you for that investment. A fun fact, even we're out of state, more as inexpensive than it is to be in-state in the University of Michigan. So just saying. And 35% of our students come from New York City. 85% of our graduates stay here. So we are a brain gain to the city, which is something that we love. And we are just so dedicated to this city. And we are really committed going forward to be the laboratory for creative careers for the 21st century. There's a lot going on in the creative industries in the city right now. We are going to be that change for those industries and lead them to be sustainable and to have incredible growth here. So I want to thank everyone for attending tonight, including our state senator, Eric Botcher. Is he here? Right there, thank you. And our wonderful assembly member, Tony Simone. Give it up for Tony Simone, please. And just thank you to our evening's panelists, and especially to our wonderful Manhattan Borough President. Thank you for coming out. I'm going to introduce him now. Please give it up for Brad.
Thank you so much. Thank you, President Schubach. We have something in common, Mr. President. We've both been president since January. So I share in that experience with you, and I want to thank everyone for coming out, and especially, can we give another round of applause for FIT, this amazing, and for centering arts and culture in New York City, which we know is important to our economy, but it's also a public asset that all of us should share, and I'm just very grateful that we have FIT helping future contributors to arts and culture remain here in New York City and attract people from all across the world. So thank you very much, President. I want to also acknowledge my colleagues, Senator Botcher and Assemblymember Simone, and our Chief of Staff, to Congressman Jerry Nadler, Rob Gottheim, all of whom will be speaking shortly. But, I just want to start by saying I think we all earnestly believe that New York City is the greatest city in the world, and that Manhattan, is at the center of it. And that's kind of what our conversation is going to be about tonight. For decades, we've had the longest subway system in the world, the biggest commuter rail network in the country and some of the most beautiful train stations. And separately, the busiest train hub in the Western Hemisphere, Penn Station. 600,000 people pass through the station every day. And compare it to JFK, which only handles 171,000 people, or LaGuardia, which is a mere pittance at 92,000 people a day. So this is a moment to transform Penn Station. And last month, we know that Amtrak selected Penn Transformation Partners as the master development for this project. And a couple of weeks ago, Amtrak signed a pre-development agreement with Penn Transformation Partners, which includes a number of developers, including Halmar and Skanska, and as well as PAU. And conceptual designs are going to be expected to be unveiled in September, with a final design by February 2027. This is the exact time that we need the public and we need your input. The right moment for us to demand bold, transformative change. The question on the table tonight for our speakers and panelists will be, will that include through running? And goodness knows in previous decades, we've fumbled the ball when it comes to big transit challenges. Over the past 60 years, New York's history has been littered with foreclosed transit opportunities. We've had so many unforced errors that haven't expanded transit for people. Let's start with the demolition of the original Penn Station back in 1963, or Nelson Rockefeller's ambitious subway expansion plan in 1968 that included a full 2nd Avenue subway, a Utica Avenue subway, and an expansion of the L all the way to Avenue C on the Lower East Side. That didn't happen because of the fiscal crisis. Phase 2 of the 2nd Avenue subway, thanks to Governor Hochul, who's being represented here tonight, is happening, but it's at least 6 years away. And we know that Robert Moses intentionally precluded the Long Island Expressway from including LIRR trains in the median of the highway. And JFK and LaGuardia still don't have one-seat connections to and from Manhattan. And we all remember how convoluted Governor Cuomo's air train plan was. And while we're talking about Governor Cuomo, we know that he helped kill any plans for commuter rail travel over the Tappan Zee Bridge. And there was a planned 7-line expansion at 41st and 10th that didn't come to fruition. And look at Moynihan Train Hall, where New York State contributed $615 million to build a new train station for Amtrak. You're welcome. Amtrak contributed a third of that, but what did it get us? It's a beautiful train station, but there's no additional train capacity. We could go on and on, but the point we want to make is that this is an inflection point and that there is a project on the table to remake the busiest train hub in the Western Hemisphere and potentially, alongside it, implement a new model for commuter rail. And this is happening at the same time that we do see enormous progress and potential in transit as we look to double capacity into Penn Station by building 2 new tunnels under the Hudson River as part of the Gateway project. So we can link up Gateway's double capacity potentially with a seamless regional train system. There's an author, Stephen Nesson, who wrote, I think in Gothamist, for generations, New York City transportation planners have dreamed of an unified regional transit system that would allow commuters to ride from New Jersey to Long Island without transferring. Gone would be the days of buying separate tickets from separate agencies run by separate states. Well, that's what we're confronting today, and we have to seize the moment to increase train capacity through Penn Station. Am I right about that? And it's so incredibly rare for projects like Gateway and Penn Station transformation to come along, and we have to be careful to ensure that we don't drop the ball like we repeatedly have over the last 75 years. Now, the result of the Federal Railroad Administration Services Optimization Study, Part 1, are not going to come out imminently, but it will help determine the shape that through running could take. And I urge the public to engage with this group, and I am grateful to Andy Byford for being with us tonight to speak to us. So I just want to thank everyone for this incredible opportunity for us to weigh in early and hopefully often as this project proceeds. Before I introduce Andy Byford, I'm going to just tell you a little bit about the format. It's going to be very brief. We're going to have a few speakers, including our elected officials and Train Daddy, and then we're going to have a 30-minute panel discussion, and then we're going to have a 30-minute opportunity for you to ask questions where hopefully you've received some cards to fill out those questions over the next hour. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce my elected official colleagues who are going to say a few words before we introduce Andy. Our first speaker would be our council member, who is now the state senator. I make that mistake often, but he is serving us in Albany. His office is just a couple of blocks from here. I toured it last evening, and boy, it's a lot cleaner than when I had it. Please welcome State Senator Eric Bottcher.
Hello, everybody. So I really want to thank my friend and colleague, Brad Hoylman-Sigal, for putting this together. This is a very important night, and I'm really excited to hear what everyone has to say tonight. For the first time in a really long time, I feel optimistic about the future of Penn Station. It was 2 years ago when I was a city council member when we denied Madison Square Garden's ask for an indefinite special permit extension or a long-term special permit extension. And one of the reasons that we did it is because nothing had happened for so long, and we were not going to kick the can down the road for another 20 years, another 30 years. So we said 5 years, that's it. And I'm so excited to see things start to happen. And to me, one of my top priorities was to see a train station not with small aesthetic fixes and bigger entrances on the corners, but to finally have once again a train station that is worthy of the greatest city on the planet. Now, you could applaud for that. Now, it is unlikely that we'll ever be able to recreate McKim and White's masterpiece, but we have to try to come as close as possible. And I am so happy with what we've seen so far, with a grand train hall on 8th Avenue, with soaring ceilings. And when we were having discussions a couple years ago about this, about what the train station would look like, some folks were saying, well, that would be too expensive to do. But what we're building now, people 100 years from now are going to be walking through that station. And are they going to walk through a station with low ceilings and the same kind of layout it has now and say, boy, I'm so happy that they saved a few bucks in 2026? Or are they going to say, wow, thank goodness they built this for us the same way that they built those train tunnels under the Hudson River over 100 years ago? How incredible. And they didn't build that just for their generation. They built that for future generations. So we have to do it, but we have to do it smart. That's why I'm so happy we have leaders like our Manhattan Borough President, Brad Hoylman-Sigal, our congressman, our assembly member, our city council member, and all the great advocates and stakeholders working together to make sure that it's a good deal for New York City, a good deal for New York State. So let's go forward and build something that's worthy of the greatest city on the planet.
Yes. The best deal for New York is that we won't pay a penny for it. But speaking of New York State, I'm very honored to introduce our next speaker, the Assembly Member for the neighborhood, who has a lot of opinions about Penn Station in the neighborhood, Assembly Member Tony Simone.
Thank you to our great borough president for putting this on tonight. As everyone knows, I've always been a big proponent of through running. I love being in this room. Wow, look at all these transit nerds in the smartest room in the country right now. And New York City being the greatest city in the world, we should have the most amazing Penn Station central to our city than ever before, and we have to pay for it. I don't mean the city and state, I mean someone has to pay for it. And that question is not for tonight. Tonight we have some brilliant panelists talking about through running. It hurts me to see that other cities across the world, you can take one train to your destination through several cities. And yet, we're here debating studies about whether through running works. You know, I usually often tell my staff, just make it work. Just make it happen. Just don't give me studies that are already preconceived. Just make the study and increase capacity. Look, I love gorgeous renderings. I love some of the ideas out there. But we not only have to make sure we can pay for it and not give away the store to private owners or developers, but that we put commuters and residents first. That their commute is easy through sight lines and light and not this hellhole of trying to figure out where your track is. It's ridiculous in a city like New York that you have to wait for the track to be announced at the last minute. That's dysfunctional. That's not functional. For all the money we spend in New York City and New York State, we need a station that's second to none, and I hope that is coming. I'm an eternal optimist, but we've been here before, and now we have a guy somewhere else out of the state who wants to control this. Now, I won't go into that. I promise to behave tonight. But I want to thank the panelists. I want to thank our borough president for hosting. I want to thank Andy Byford, Train Daddy, who I know has been on the circuit right now selling us this new station, but I want to make sure it can be paid for. And I want to thank Polly Trottenberg, Dean of NYU Wagner, Tom Wright, who's brilliant, CEO and President of the Regional Planning Association, Blair Lorenzo, Executive Director of the Effective Transit Alliance, and of course, FIT President Jason Schubert, who's hosting us tonight. I hope I said that right. My staff were really small. I took my glasses off. Why I like big font. But anyway, I digress. But I just want to conclude. I hate getting no for an answer. We're the greatest city in the world. We should have the most masterful Penn Station ever. And we shouldn't just make through running an afterthought. We should just make it happen. And hopefully tonight the panelists will convince us on how we're going to make that happen.
Thank you, Assemblymember. And our last speaker before we get to Andy Byford, the Chief of Staff to Jerry Nadler, who has decades of experience assisting New York to understand its infrastructure, is Rob Gottheim. Rob.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Rob Gottheim. I'm Congressman Nadler's Chief of Staff. The Congressman couldn't be here because he's in Washington. Congress is in session. But this is a very important discussion, and it's a very important discussion because, as we all know, Penn Station is very much in the news. One of the main issues is how we're going to pay for it. But that's not part of the discussion tonight. What we are here to discuss is through running, and it's a very, very important topic because we can all agree that Penn Station today doesn't work, and we are building the gateway tunnels. If we're going to take advantage of the gateway tunnels and increase capacity to Penn Station, then we have to really look at through running because we really don't want to, take property unnecessarily. We don't want to expand it. Through running has the ability to increase capacity to Penn Station without actually increasing the footprint of Penn Station. So it's a very important discussion we're having today. We have a very esteemed panel. I'm happy to hear from them, and we're happy to hear from you. So thank you very much, and let's have a good discussion.
Thank you. And somebody who is larger than life and will be larger than life on the screen is Andy Byford. A quick bio of him. He's a transport professional whose career has spanned 3 continents over 3 decades. Today, he serves as a special advisor to the Amtrak Board of Directors and is leading the effort to transform New York Penn Station. Andy joined London Underground in 1989 as a uniformed station foreman and has gone on to lead the largest transit systems in the United States, some of the largest transit systems in the United States, including as well as Canada and the UK, in addition to running day-to-day operations on Australia's busiest network. These unique achievements have given Andy a rare global perspective, oh, here he is, on transport operations, finances, and politics that translate to his current role, delivering a world-class station that New York, New Jersey, and America deserve. Andy grew up in Plymouth and is a graduate of the University of Leicester. Hello, Andy.
Hi, Mr. Borough President. Hello, everyone. I'm so sorry I can't be with you today. I'm in the nation's capital, actually. I've been speaking to Senate staffers on the Hill about this very subject. Well, certainly, about Penn Station. And I just want to riff off, first of all, what President Schubach and you, Mr. Borough President, said. I always get into trouble with this when I go back to the UK, but New York is the greatest city in the world. It's why I was gutted to leave in 2020, and why as soon as I had the opportunity to come back to the US, I came back, not initially to New York, of course, but as soon as I heard that there was this project that Amtrak had been asked to lead, I asked my chairman straight away. I pretty much badgered him. I said, please, sir, give me that job. I want that job. New York is in my soul. I love this place, and certainly if I can play my small part in delivering the transformation of Penn Station, the renaissance of the district, that would be a real nice icing on my career cake. So again, sorry I can't be there, but thank you, Mr. BP, for arranging this. Hello to the panel, to Blair, to Tom, and to my good friend Polly Trottenberg. Polly, we still haven't had that cocktail, my friend. We've got to do that soon. So I got 15 minutes. I'll get straight into it. I'm particularly pleased to be able to open a forum on a subject as important as through running. It's something about which I feel very passionate. It's something that I commented publicly on 3 years ago, before I knew I would be even involved in this project. And I believe the reason I commented on it is I've always believed it represents a golden opportunity for Penn Station, the 3 railroads that use it, New York City and the tri-state. But before I speak specifically about through running, though, a bit about me very briefly and about the Penn Transformation Project, because I think that's useful context. So all I'll say on my background, you heard it from the Borough President, 37 years in railroads. But the reason I say that is it's important because I do understand operations. There's a lot of stuff that I'm not an expert on, but I understand operations. I've been a train service manager, run 3 lines on the tube as a TSM. I've been chief operating officer of Rail Corps. So operations is something that I understand. I can't claim to know everything, of course. I've got good people around me, but I do have an operational background. I've also got a project delivery background, having delivered the Spadina subway extension in Toronto, and also, more importantly and relevantly, the Elizabeth line in London when I was Commissioner of Transport for London itself, an integrated transport system. And just picking up what one of the speakers just said, that's got to be the holy grail for us. An integrated transit system is ultimately where we've got to get to. It certainly really makes London tick. The Elizabeth line is a great example of through running. It connects 2 overground railways on the east side and the west side of London, with a seamless 1-seat ride through London. You previously had to connect via the tube to go through London. You don't anymore. It connects the 2 powerhouses of London as the financial centre, the City of London and Canary Wharf, to London Heathrow, Britain's international aviation gateway. And it complements the existing north-south through running railroad, the existing north-south through running railroad, i.e. Thameslink, that itself connects 2 major airports, namely London Luton and London Gatwick. And it's no exaggeration to say that the Elizabeth line has been a game changer for London. Listen to some of these stats. Already it's contributed £40 billion to the UK Exchequer. It's transformed journey times. You can now do Canary Wharf to Heathrow in something like 41 minutes. It used to be a couple of hours. It was with the changes. It's made a massive difference. It's added 15% capacity to the UK national network. It's already one of Britain's busiest railroads in a comparatively short time. It's seen multiple businesses and housing estates spring up around it on either side of the city in the satellite towns that are now served with a direct line. So it's had a massive economic halo impact on the surrounding cities and towns. And Crossrail 2, which will be a third through running railroad, the Crossrail 2 is already being talked about on the back of the success of Crossrail 1, now the Elizabeth line. It's not just London, of course, that benefits from through running. You've got the RER in Paris, you've got the S-Bahn in Berlin, and closer to home, there's a form of through running that goes through Philadelphia. So if they can do it, we can do it. Best city in the world. And I said I'd come back to what we're doing at Penn before I return to through running. So that's not the main purpose of tonight, but just as a little Penn picture, hopefully you've seen some of the renderings, more of those to come very, very shortly. But in setting up this project, only a year ago, May 2025, we were given this mandate to set up a competition to appoint a master developer. In doing that, we set out 5 key objectives. So they're obviously to renovate and modernize the station. That's kind of the no-brainer. But to also exponentially increase the concourse capacity and make the station fully accessible, to enable safer and more efficient station operations. To the Assembly member's earlier point, the station is not as efficient as it should be. There's much more that we could do to make it more efficient. To accommodate future passenger growth, we've got Metro North on the near horizon, and we've got the gateway tunnels not that far, in the grand scheme of things, not that far in the future to accommodate. And we must ultimately deliver a world-class user experience for all customers. I want this to be America's world-class station. So in doing that, we are going to have that single level concourse that Moynihan enjoys. So no more horrible dark dog-leg corridors, no more cramped conditions like the pit that New Jersey Transit customers endure, no more dark and gloomy and boiling hot conditions at platform level. So we will be adding capacity, and we do want to deliver that world-class service, not just in the bricks and mortar, but in every other aspect of operations. And in launching the competition, I insisted from the get-go that the train shed must be included, because had we just looked at the head house and a single level concourse, in my opinion, we'd have been leaving New Yorkers selling them short, because people would have said, wow, nice head house, beautiful single level concourse, but then they'd have descended down into the same cramped, noisy, hot, slightly scary conditions at track level. So we specified to bidders that they should be ready to embrace the outputs of an independent study to increase throughput, which leads me on to the second thing that I insisted on taking on this project. I insisted that there should be a data-driven, independent study of what's possible at Penn in terms of more efficient operations and the potential for more through running over and above what Amtrak already does with its Acela and regional services. And it's worth noting some background here. Prior to the federal administration getting involved, Penn Station, as many of you will know, was the subject of 2 complementary projects: reconstruction led by the MTA and expansion led by Amtrak. Mindful of the need to add much more capacity, especially from the west to service NJT, and with Metro North coming in, the previous proposed approach involved acquisition and demolition of Block 780 south of Penn Station in order to accommodate a huge new terminal station, stub terminal, for an estimated $16 billion. This was highly controversial, not least amongst businesses and residents of the threatened block, but also because many, notably Sam Turvey and the team at Rethink New York, strongly felt that the case for such massive expansion and expenditure had not been made, and that the alternative, a more imaginative use of the existing station footprint, had not been explored. Rethink went further than just calling for an independent review. They put together a highly technical, creative, and well-researched plan for what a remodeled Penn could deliver and what benefits through running could bring. So when I was appointed to head up Penn, it was with a mandate that ruled out expansion, no more demolition of the block, certainly not any more expansion until and unless proper analysis was carried out. And because the mandate Amtrak was given was to focus on Penn itself and to stop work on station enlargement. So we're not looking at station expansion. It seemed to me that also I inherited a highly polarized debate in which expansion protagonists thought that the only solution was a massive stub terminal and that TR through running had no real merit. While at the opposite end of that spectrum, as advocates of through running believed that it would solve all of the region's needs with no need for any expansion. Now, as a railroader with 37 years experience, I firmly believe the truth probably lies somewhere along that spectrum. It's neither one polar extreme or the other. And that it's a data-driven analysis that will determine the correct answer. I'm very glad, therefore, that such a data-driven exercise is underway, and I fully support it being independent. It had to be. Previously, the railroads were accused of making up their own research and formulating their own answers. So let's have it independent, and it's exactly that. Under the auspices of the FRA, the study takes two parts. The first, to inform the successful master developer of physical changes that should be costed and factored into their emerging design. The second phase, to use rail traffic controller, RTC modeling, and market analysis to assess what's possible in terms of trains per hour throughput and to gauge the latent demand for intra-regional trips. That study will report out on its first phase imminently. And I counsel everyone to remember it's just the first phase of the study. As such, it won't have all the answers yet. That will come in phase 2, when I will insist on full RTC modeling and a proper analysis of Rethink and other people's plans in order that we get the right answers, the informed answers. Critically, we must ensure that the end result delivers what's needed to increase Penn Station's capacity now and to meet future need. Back to through running. Put simply, it would see more trains go through Penn without terminating to return whence they came or to go empty to the yard. Instead, trains would continue in revenue service to points beyond Penn, just like Amtrak trains do today. Alongside physical changes to platforms and with improvements to the way the railroads operate, there is the potential to have trains spend less time in the platform and thereby increase overall throughput. And wouldn't it be good if we could clear platforms more quickly, thereby enabling them to be accessed sooner? No more last-minute stampede to the train. That's got to be one of our objectives. Now, I'm not underestimating the practical and logistical challenges that would need to be overcome to enable currently incompatible services to deliver economic benefit to the region. But it's certainly worth studying, and Penn Transformation gives us that golden opportunity. I very much look forward to tonight's discussion, and I'll leave it with this. It would have been immoral to tear down a vibrant block of New York City before we had properly evaluated how to extract every ounce of additional capacity out of Penn's existing footprint. Maybe we will still need a bit of expansion to top up whatever we achieve. But rather than spend $16 billion on a stub terminal and impose mass relocation of New Yorkers from established homes and businesses, $16 billion that I note had no agreed funding source, yet our own proposal for just half that amount is somehow way more controversial. That's why we put so much effort into choosing the right master developer via a scrupulous procurement competition. It's why Penn Transformation will be way more than just a mere spacious concourse and head house, and why those that are already writing Penn Transformation off as some sort of cosmetic improvements are just plain wrong. So, Mr. Borough President, thank you for letting me share my thoughts. I'm really looking forward to hearing from the esteemed panel, and I now hand you back to start the discussion.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, They've called Andy Byford a larger-than-life figure, and there you go. But good luck, Andy. Tomorrow, England takes on Argentina, World Cup. We'll see what happens there. I am now very pleased to introduce our panelists who will be discussing this topic tonight. The first, let me introduce Polly Trottenberg. We all know her. She's now currently Dean of NYU's Robert F. Wagner Graduate School of Public Service since 2025, where she also serves as a global distinguished professor. She's a nationally recognized public sector leader and transportation expert. She has a 3-decade career at all levels of government. Prior to joining Wagner, she served as the deputy secretary under Pete Buttigieg at the U.S. Department of Transportation, leading the implementation of the landmark bipartisan infrastructure law that Congressman Nadler had something to do with, which provided generational transportation investments with a focus on mobility, accessibility, economic growth, roadway safety, resiliency, and project delivery. Polly Trottenberg. Next, we have Blair Lorenzo. Blair Lorenzo is a professional urbanist who has been studying cities, transportation, and how they work together for most of her adult life. She has a bachelor's in urbanism from NYU and a master's of urban practice from the Parsons School of Design at the New School. She is co-founder and executive director of the Effective Transit Alliance, where for the past 5 years she has worked to build the field of technical transit advocacy in New York using research, education, and the analysis of international best practices to advocate for a transit network that is truly living up to its world-class potential. Blair Lorenzo. And then finally, Tom Wright is president and CEO of the Regional Plan Association, RPA. Prior to becoming president in 2015, Tom was RPA's executive director for over a decade. He's led many RPA initiatives, including both the RPA 4th Regional Plan in 2017 and the 3rd Regional Plan, a region at risk in 1996. He helped manage RPA's response to 9/11 and the rebuilding of Lower Manhattan, including the historic Listening to the City from 2002, the campaign to build a mixed-use neighborhood at Manhattan's Hudson Yards, and RPA's Centennial Exhibition, The Constant Future in Grand Central Terminal in 2022. In January of 2020, Governor Phil Murphy appointed Tom to be chair of the New Jersey State Planning Commission, which is currently overseeing the process of readopting the New Jersey State Development and Redevelopment Plan. Tom is a visiting lecturer at Columbia University. He has a master's degree in urban planning from Columbia and a bachelor's degree in history and a certificate in American Studies from Princeton University. Tom Wright. All right, panel. You can turn on your mics, I think. Hello? Okay, we're on. We're live. Good to see you. Thank you, each and every one of you, for being here. Polly, why don't we start with you, if that's okay?
Sure
As
thing.
somebody who has worked at both the federal and the city level, what is your understanding of through running? I think we have a kind of a diagram behind you. You can see it there as well. And what's your thumbnail assessment of it today?
All right. Well, first of all, Borough President, thank you for having us. And it is great to look at in an audience of a lot of folks I know who have worked on this issue, been passionate advocates on this issue, reported on this issue. And I sort of got my start with the whole Penn Station issue back when I was a child, pitching myself to work for Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan and talking about how we could perhaps transform that beautiful post office across the street into something beautiful. I want to echo, I think, a little bit maybe of what we heard from Andy and what I think I'm going to hear from my colleagues, which is, of course, through running is an exciting idea, and doing more to create a regional system is something we've all been thinking about for so many years. And I'm proud to say, in my last role as Deputy Secretary in the Biden administration, when we had, I'm happy to say, billions of dollars to spend on passenger rail and a lot invested here in the Northeast Corridor and in the Gateway project, we tried to make sure with those dollars that we kept every option open. But I think it is also important, something as I've been through my career that I fixate more and more on, and Andy kind of alluded to it, and I think you'll hear it from these two as well. I think the question is, what's the best way to expand capacity at Penn Station? And, again, throughout my career, I've sort of gotten focused on this. What are all the different options? How much do each of them cost? How much capacity are they going to get us? How complicated are they to implement? What are the other third-party players we need to involve? At the federal level, you can often be talking about, do state legislatures have to do things? Do whole new technologies have to be invented? And so through running is clearly a piece of this, but I want to give credit actually to both my colleagues here, and I think particularly RPA has done, if you haven't seen it, they just put it out a few weeks ago, and one of the authors is here, Joshua Berman, and another colleague, Rachel Weinberger. I think one of the most thorough looks at every detailed question about not only the places where through running makes the most sense, but what are some of the other things we could do to expand capacity at Penn Station that might not even cost that much money or involve complicated political plays and new technology. So that's the burning question to me. Through running is a part of it, and thank you, Borough President, for, I think, keeping this dialogue real and grounded, particularly in what's going to be most important for New York City. And I will just close by saying, and I know we heard it from some of the elected officials, it is very important at the end of this that we are a regional system here, but I want to make sure that the city's interests are protected. The legislation that's being floated down in Washington certainly makes me anxious. It would take away it would preempt some of the city's right to collect property taxes and properties around the station. That's fairly unprecedented to attempt that at the federal level. So even as we pursue, I think, some fantastic ideas on how to finally make Penn Station the station we want it to be and the regional rail network to be the regional rail network we want it to be, how we do it is going to be important. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Tom and Blair, you've both written, I think, widely read reports by folks in this room in recent months. Tom, let's start with yours, which I think is the most recent. In your report, which I agree with Polly, really did look at every permutation that might be considered. But you say through running alone can't solve the problem, and that Penn Station needs to physically expand. But you also say limited through running could help in some cases. Where's the line between this helps and this isn't enough?
Sure. Thanks. First of all, I want to thank you also, Brad, for convening this forum and everybody who's spoken at it. It is great. I worked closely with Andy when he was at the MTA in his prior iteration. And strongly agree with some of the things he said, including his final comment about, it would be immoral to talk about expanding Penn before you've done everything you can to get all of the capacity out of the existing station first. And in fact, I quote you, I remember it, one of the first of the advisory committee meetings we had several years ago, back in before Amtrak took over this, when you made a similar statement, and I thought that was really well put. But I guess you asked kind of where is that line on what's going to do that. First, let me say that, and Polly just made this point, but I guess from the RPA perspective, I want to really highlight it too. Capacity is the key issue because we still have the extraordinary need for people to get. Most of the people in this region using the commuter rail system are still trying to get into the core of the region the day during work and then to leave in the evening. And when I say most, I'm really talking about, the ratio is about 100 to 1. It's not just a little bit. If you took literally if you took the 15 regional centers outside Manhattan on the Long Island Railroad and Northeast Corridor Metro North, the 15 largest regional centers and all the jobs in them and added them together and then multiplied them by 3, it would still be fewer jobs than we have right here around Penn Station. And if you even assume that the job growth in those regional centers is going to be much more than we're going to have here in Manhattan over the next generation, it probably means that about the same number of jobs would be created in those 15 regional centers as here in Manhattan. Most of the people, really, I said this on NPR, Midtown Manhattan and the area around Grand Central and Penn Station is maybe the greatest invention our species has ever made to create human prosperity. It is a prosperity machine. Millions of people come in every day and they earn a lot of money in lots of creative jobs and an economy that's so robust and vibrant. And it works because of that large, diverse, talented, educated workforce that we have access to. And we have to, and that's the real critical issue. And so the capacity is the key thing. And as we build the Gateway Tunnel and double the capacity under the Hudson River so that we can go from roughly 24 to 48 trains an hour coming from the west into Penn Station, we need to have a train station that can handle that. We've looked at all of these proposals that other groups have looked at. And I want to say we're not opposed to through running because regional connectivity would be a good thing over the long term. And I think Blair's outfit has done a phenomenal job of talking about the ways. And there are certain things that can be done in the shorter term and less expensive, and other things that will require a lot of cost and investment over time. But it will not solve the capacity issue by itself. In fact, it doesn't really do that much, I think, and probably Blair and I disagree here, but I don't even, when we've looked at the alternatives for increasing capacity at Penn Station, through running is actually kind of a non-factor. What will change it is reducing dwell time at Penn Station. Andy talked about that. And the plan that's being talked about would do some very important things that would allow trains to come through Penn Station somewhat faster. By taking out the Infosys Theater, they are able to eliminate some of the columns going down to the platforms, which creates more space at the platforms, which allows for more staircases and escalators, which allows people to get up and down more quickly, and may reduce, will reduce, I think, by some amount, the amount of time that trains need to spend at Penn Station. And that will increase throughput somewhat. The FRA, as Andy mentioned, has a consultant doing a study. We haven't seen the results of it yet. I think I have a pretty good idea, though, frankly, of what it'll say. And they'll look at whether or not expanding the length of some of the platforms would make sense, or whether you should take some of the platforms and merge them together to do that. None of those things are kind of cheap, free, easy, and they all have trade-offs. Expanding the platforms may preclude future expansion efforts of the station. Combining platforms may actually create more entanglement with operations and not actually increase things. The sense we have is that when you look at the options, and in particular, the most important probably, removing obstacles on the platforms, adding egress, making it so people can move through more quickly, and other things. You know, I've talked to various people. We've tried to do our own analysis. We don't have modeling capacity in-house at RPA, but we've tried to figure this out. And what I would say is, and when the report comes out, you can all test me on this and catch me if I'm wrong, but my guess is that we're talking about a range of somewhere between 2 to 8 trains per hour additional capacity that can be squeezed out of the existing footprint of Penn Station. That's my best guess right now. There may be people in the room who have insider information that's better than what I have, but that's what we think is probably possible in the range, which leaves us somewhere between 16 and 22 trains an hour short of the capacity that Gateway delivers. And so where I disagree with my friend Andy Byford, frankly, is I think that it behooves us, as they move forward with trying to figure out this Penn transformation plan, which has a lot of great elements in it, also has some concerns, how it's going to get paid for, and other things. But we have to be thinking long-term about the capacity issues, too. And I think it was a mistake to shut down the study thinking about what those options are. And to be clear, nobody had ever picked, the railroads had not picked an alternative they preferred, because just as Andy pointed out, we didn't, until we know what kind of capacity we can get out of the existing Penn Station, we don't know what kind of capacity we're trying to solve for with any kind of alternative. And that's why there's no plan right now, nor should there be, for that. But I think to kind of ignore that issue and think that through running will solve this problem is misinformed. And I guess I'll just close with this. And Blair will talk about all the reasons why Blair and their work thinks that this could go better than I, and maybe be more optimistic than me. But I guess I'd say that I've kind of talked to all of the railroads and the communities and folks who are working on this over time. And the railroads all have different priorities on what they're trying to achieve at Penn Station and other things. But there is one thing that all the operators seem to agree on, which is that through running will not solve this problem by itself. And in fact, the solution will come by some combination of improvements to Penn Station that reduce the dwell time, not by through running, but by doing other things that allow trains to get in and out faster, and then figuring out what else needs to be done. So there, I've come on with it. There we go. Bring it on.
Well, no, thank you.
Somebody clap. Thank you.
All right. When the through-running skeptic gets applause at the through-running town hall,
I did okay there.
I think you've done yourself some justice.
I'm still clean.
Blair, you heard Tom, and you obviously know his report, and ETA has written its own, and you argue that, counter to Blair, that through running won't make crowding worse, it'll make it better. How does your plan differ, or how does your modeling differ from Tom's?
Yeah, and I mean, let me just start. Thank you again for putting this up. Through running is a vital issue for the region, and I really appreciate it. And we really do appreciate the work by our colleagues at the RPA, even though on this issue we have a completely different understanding of what the outcome is. You know, as Andy Byford said at the beginning, through running is sort of it is something cities around the world are spending billions and billions of dollars to do for all of its benefits. And of those, I actually agree with you. You know, capacity has got to be number one. It's one of the reasons, you know, at ETA, we're not focused on the changes to the head house and all that beyond, you know, the architecture and things like that. That can be very important. It can be very unimportant. That depends on things, but it really has to be about making the transportation system better. And, you know, the fundamental truth is, you know, we look at how successful things like the German S-Bahns are, Paris's RER, and of course the Elizabeth line in London, and we see how, you know, it has gone, you know, created tremendous things, and we want that for New York. Now, I also do actually agree with Tom about capacity. Most people are probably still going to be, you know, traveling to and from Manhattan. Manhattan is a great job center. That is one of the reasons we have some of the strongest transit ridership in the world. That is not the issue. The question is really, how fast can you move trains through Penn Station? How low can you get the dwell time? And if you look at examples around the world, you will find that you can get the dwell time quite low. You know, for instance, in France, the RER have trains from two different operators go through the tunnel. They had people get on and off the train. They actually switched crews from one railroad to the other, and they were doing this regularly in 2 minutes. Now, we're not saying that we're going to do that at Penn Station right now. The platforms are a lot narrower and they're a lot thing, but there's a lot that can go on with this. I think where a lot of our difference lies and where we see the capacity and where we disagree is that through running is not, well, we're talking about the fundamental issue of moving trains through Penn Station. That is sort of the final end of a system of improvements and of how you look at rail and how you operate rail. It's about trying to break down some of the artificial distinctions between what's a commuter train and what's a metro train or a subway train. People get very locked up on this, and there are differences, but it's more of a spectrum than a binary line. And you know, a lot of the practices and regulations in both fields are very different, either though for a lot of times, sure, you may have less doors on a train or you may have other things, but it's fundamentally people getting on and off a train. It's fundamentally trains moving through a system. And we look and you see things like what we need to do for the region, which is invest in capacity. It is electrifying. You know, New York should not have, for the most part, diesel branches anymore. It should be about running more frequency, which is
Let's talk about the difference in trains.
Sure.
New Jersey, Long Island Railroad, and how we're going to manufacture a seamless train that can serve both tracks. Is that, and how long is that going to take?
Well, so this is a solved problem internationally. You go back to what Andy talked about in Thameslink in 1989, you know, was connecting. We have 3 separate power systems that go into Penn Station. You have 750 volt third rail on the Long Island side, and on the New Jersey side, and through there you have both 25 hertz and 60 hertz overhead line. Basically, every major manufacturer today makes trains that can run seamlessly on all of these systems. We have, in fact, Metro North right now operates a train that operates on both third rail and overhead power, the M8, which is used on the New Haven line into Grand Central. It's pretty seamless. The pantographs go up when the wire starts. They come down when the wire stops. These are used, equivalent trains are used all over the world. They're kind of a standard thing. They don't cost more than normal trains. And, you know, something ETA would really like to see is, you know, the region purchasing more of these trains as it expands its fleet, as it, you know, both builds for more service and as old trains get retired. You know, we should be building trains that can run everywhere. They really don't cost more than everywhere. They're off the shelf, essentially, from places, from manufacturers like Siemens and all sorts. I mean, pretty much everyone does it. And that equipment, you know, enables this. It enables a train that starts in New Jersey to run all the way to Long Island or all the way to somewhere in Connecticut and vice versa.
Mm-hmm. Polly, how much confidence do you have that the different networks could get their act together and order these trains?
It's a great question, and look, I think it's a complicated one. It's sort of why I go back to when you're looking at all these solutions, looking at what's the cost, what's the benefit, what's the feasibility, and what are kind of the third-party dependencies and complexities. I know we have a lot of experts in this room. I was on the MTA board for a lot of years, and you know, what is the cycle for ordering new train sets? You know, you're saying things are off the shelf, but rarely in New York do we buy our technologies off the shelf. There are usually a lot of complicated requirements. If you're using federal dollars, it's got to be made in America. So just, I agree with you, the technology exists and it could be one we could deploy, but you also have to sort of ask the tough questions about how many train sets are in the capital plans of the particular agencies? What are the other needs they have? Are they prepared? I don't know whether the trains there'd be no cost differential. I wonder about that. And would they prepare if there isn't to spend that money before they need to? It can be done, but I just think you have to look under the hood to make sure if you're calling on the transit agencies to do this, that it fits into their schedules and their budgets and they see a clear case for it.
And you, I think you oversaw the Federal Railroad Administration in your capacity in Washington. Do you think that this study, that the FRA study that is going to be coming out soon, will tackle issues like this?
I'm not sure. Look, there are a lot of really talented folks at the FRA, but it's no secret the agency's lost some folks too over the course of the past year and a half. Let's just put that out there. I know, as I think Tom mentioned, we're waiting to see the first part of the study. By the way, I think there is a lot of expertise here in this region that can answer those questions as well. I don't know that we totally need to rely on the FRA to give us the answers, but I do just, again, I am focused on this question of not only can it be done, but at what cost, at what benefit, what do the timetables look like, what are the technologies that are needed, you know, who's going to bring the money to the table. You know, you're mentioning, Blair, I understand this, you know, in Europe they're spending a lot of money on this. the U.S. context has always been more challenging when it comes to rail investments. It's always been, much more a little bit feast or famine at the federal level. I was very proud to be part of the moment when it was a feast. Maybe there's more of a feast coming, but I'm not sure yet that we know the answer to that, which makes it all the more important to really make sure for every dollar we can get that we're really getting the most out of it.
And please.
Yeah, and just to jump in for 1 second, I mean, I can already answer at least one of your concerns, which is, for instance, the dual mode trains that run on overhead and on third rail are actually coming inflation adjusted cheaper already for the units we're buying. You bring up some good points about things, none of ETA's plans have ever called for replacing anything except at the end of its life. This is not about, buying a whole new train set off the shelf, but it is, there are some hard questions to be asked about, where, what does federal funding for railroads look like in the future? Does that open more options for non-Buy America requirements? And even if it doesn't, most of these companies do have facilities in the United States at this point.
I mean, no question. I mean, look, it's no secret there are only a couple companies that are supplying Buy America compliant rail cars in the U.S. right now. And let's just put it out there. The last purchase that Amtrak made on those Acela trains took a long time. A lot of challenges, a lot of cost overrun. Not to say it can't be done, but just, again, to make sure we're taking a realistic look at that. I don't want to get too bogged out. The train car problem is one we can solve more easily, I think, than some of the other questions. So
yeah, exactly.
I don't want to spend too much time.
I'm not sure, as a passenger, I like the new Acela trains better than the old ones, but that's just my own opinion. Tom, you had something to say about trains.
Well, I have a bunch of things. Look, I guess I'll try to come back to the...
Let me ask you, Tom,
Sure.
if we could solve the platform and staircase issue, would you be more open to the potential of through running?
The question is, what's the
federal government
problem
was
that
paying
through
for all of
running's
it?
supposed to solve? I mean, from my perspective, through running is not going to solve the capacity issue. There are other things that we can do at Penn Station that will add capacity to the train station, and we should absolutely do them. But through running, I mean, and like we're talking about buying, different train sets. It takes decades to do that. Now, to do it so that you can so that you could have electrified trains on the entire Long Island Railroad system, so that people don't need to switch in Huntington or something, is a very good idea, is a high priority. And frankly, I think the Long Island Railroad passengers would be more interested in eliminating that transfer at Huntington so they had a one-seat ride out on the line into Manhattan than getting a Huntington train to New Brunswick, because there's just not that much demand for that. And again, you have on the Long Island Railroad network, the problem is the electrification, and on the New Jersey Transit network, it's capacity under the Hudson River. But again, it's kind of a question of what problem are you trying to solve? And again, there are things that could be done in terms of schedule and payment and other things that really should be done as soon as possible to try and integrate and create more connectivity. But let me get a little more specific about this, because this is where Blair and I disagree. I mean, you talk about the European models and the 2-minute headways. Those are completely unrealistic in New York. I don't think that anybody at any of the operators thinks that they are realistic. Andy talked about how the Elizabeth line connected the two great central business districts. Well, we have, again, in this metropolitan region, we have Midtown Manhattan. And the through running proposal that folks are talking about is not going to connect Penn Station to Grand Central. And one of the things is when you have multiple CBD stops in Paris, in London, in Berlin, it means that when the train comes in and you do the through running operation, not everybody gets off. Some percentage, you may know better than I. I'm guessing Gare de Lyon, it's what, 30% or something like that of the riders get off in the morning. So you have about a third of the train get on and off. Under a through-running operation in New York, the train would still pull in from New Jersey on its way to Long Island, and 99% of the people would need to get off. So to think that you're going to get that done in 2 minutes is unrealistic. Now let's talk about the train designs. I'm getting wound up here, but we have bi-level trains.
Is it just possible to, Blair, could you respond to that?
Sure. Do you want to,
Yeah, I mean, we're not talking about actual 2 minutes. We're actually talking closer between 3 and 5, depending on what you're doing.
And just to be clear, Paula, you have to be the tiebreaker between this.
Yeah.
And, it's funny because we did a whole bunch of modeling based on, observed things of how fast people get on and off trains, how fast platforms clear at Penn, that sort of thing. And we found that even, and we have an open source model. You can go check it. You can go look at it if people do want to. If that's your job, that's your interest, please do. Even in the worst case scenario, a fully loaded 12-car bi-level train comes into New York Penn, empties out, completely full to the gills. We calculated that the platform clears in around 3 minutes, and that's holding one on the narrowest.
How many minutes?
3.
3. Uh-huh.
And we calculated that holding one staircase empty. Now this was both for fire code reasons or to allow people to go down to the platform. It's crowded. I'm not going to say that, but it's for the technical people around us. It's pedestrian level of service D. It is what the Transportation Research Board considers acceptable for peak hour loading, and this would be the absolute peak of peak that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And fundamentally, to back up a second, this is where, when you say where's the capacity come from, this is where the capacity comes from. The capacity comes from moving trains through quicker. To me, this is the discussion of most people, a huge percentage of people on the A train get off at, in Midtown and do this.
You know what I'm going to say.
Yeah, I know what you're going to say. I'll also throw another one at you, though. The vast majority of people who come into Penn transfer to the subway at unideally designed stations, and the subway has no trouble handling them on much smaller platforms.
Yeah. So the subway, I have to, Brad.
Yeah, please.
The subway trains that you're talking about, people are standing on their trains. They're not sitting on them. We have to, again, the average Long Island Railroad New Jersey commuter is coming much further than the average Paris-London commuter. And those commuters want seats. They don't want to be standing for 45 minutes or an hour to get there. That's why the railroads have invested in the bi-level cars. Those cars don't have the center doors. It takes a lot longer for people to get on and off those trains than it does a subway or the European parallels that you're talking about, and it always will. And I mean, you're talking about a 3-minute headway, and I will see if the FRA, my understanding is that the FRA consultants have been tasked with figuring out how they can drive down that dwell time as far as they can, and if it's less than 6 minutes, I owe you a beer, and if it's 6 minutes or more, you owe me a beer.
Okay.
And
you heard it here, and I heard it here.
I'm collecting it. And I will let probably go in a second. I will also say, just to you, the RER does operate bi-level trains where they try very hard to get everyone a seat.
Yeah. But again, the RER is in a metro region where only a fraction of the people are getting on or off the train at any station. It's not 100% of the people getting off and then trying to get up to the platform and then come down again. Today, it takes the Penn Station, it's about 7 minutes to load a train that's empty, and it's about 9 minutes to empty a train. I think I got those right? And so to think that you're going to get those down, think that you're going to load and empty and load a train in 3 minutes is just unrealistic.
Polly, where do you fall on this
I want to be here either way when we see how the FRA study comes out. Look, I think the good
3
news
versus
is
6 minutes.
I think it's funny. I've happened to be on a train to Boston, Washington, and Philly in the past few weeks. So I hate to say it, we didn't get off quickly. Here's the good news. I think some of this will be analytically knowable. We'll see what the FRA comes out with. Luckily, we have expertise on this stage and expertise in this audience to take a hard look at what they come up with. I will say, I think Tom does raise an important point, which is any way you slice it, we're still going to have most everybody when trains pull into Penn Station getting on or off. That is, we are different in sort of the nodes of Europe. That doesn't mean that through running, I think, can't be important for a regional economic growth and transportation strategy. But I do think the question of Penn Station capacity, I'm not sure it's going to be a game changer. It should be on the list. And again, I think there are a lot of other things that we're not talking about so much tonight, but also need to be on the list. And, you know, Andy mentioned a properly reconfigured Penn Station, getting rid of some columns, figuring out where you can widen platforms, where you can have more egress. Those can be really profound. They may be, you know, quite profound. Here's hoping in the end that they will be. But to some degree, this dispute, hopefully, will be knowable when we start to see more of that data.
Okay, so this is a question from the audience, and Tom, I just want to, and it's based on something you said in the report. Through running has been implemented from New Haven on Metro North to New Jersey for football games. How can we use this existing example as a test case for preliminary through running?
Yeah, no,
I mean, because you say in the report it can be used successfully.
Yeah, and it provides on football games in the off-peak, when we don't have the crushes of the commuters coming in, it provides an important amenity and service for people to a targeted area. And that's the kind of thing we ought to be looking for more to do. I mean, that's specifically it. But again, that's not solving the capacity issue during the weekday rush hour, I guess is the thing. I'm coming off too negative on this. We do think like trying to figure out more ways that there are targeted services that could serve a specific population and clientele would be really good with through running, but it doesn't, you know. It's not going to make a big change at all, I believe, in the capacity at Penn Station. I think there are other things that will add some capacity, and that whether we are getting 10% of what we need or 25% of what we need or 30% of what we need is what we have to figure out. But we're still going to be far short of the gateway capacity at the end of the day. And I feel very confident saying that. And I know people don't want to hear that because they don't want to talk about expansion. It's expensive, it's disruptive, it will be difficult, it will have to be a future phase of this. By the way, a lot of the through running operations in the other world cities that people talk about were not built by taking an old station and retrofitting it to through running, but by building an expansion that was through running, which has been RPA's plan only for the last 20 years or so. People keep kind of talking about a stub end expansion. They should never build a stub end expansion. An expansion, the next capacity problem for our region after Gateway will be the East River. We will need a 5th and 6th tunnel under the East River connecting Penn Station to Sunnyside Yards, and any expansion of Penn Station should be designed and planned for that. And that will open up all kinds of opportunities that Blair is talking about. But a lot of those world cities that we look at and we say they have through running, why can't we have it? Well, the way they got it was not to take an old station and renovate it, it was to expand it.
Yeah, well, one of the questions is about some of those world cities. Paris, for example, Blair, you point to it, and Philadelphia, as successfully swapping train crews in just a few minutes. Do you think we could aspire to that or achieve that kind of coordination here?
Oh, absolutely. You know, and it's not something, you know, on some level, it's not something you immediately flip a switch. It's not that you start doing it exactly tomorrow. But we have a lot of very good professionals in our railroads, in our agencies. You know, scheduling, moving people around, doing this, getting them on and off is really doable. And as if we are willing to coordinate, and I will say this is the biggest issue that faces through running of any sort, is getting New York and New Jersey, and to a lesser extent Connecticut, to actually be on the same page and agree to you know, coordinate schedules, coordinate services, coordinate ticketing, things like that. But to actually implement
who does that? Who's in charge of that coordination, Polly?
She is.
Well, I've had now the experience both at the local level and then particularly at the federal level in helping to be part of really getting Gateway off the ground. And the governance and bringing the states together and bringing Amtrak to the table and the federal government took a lot of work. And by the way, I think a lot of federal money really helps as well. I mean, this is something you all know well.
Amen to that.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to bring, agencies that, as Tom and Blair are saying, have their own priorities, their own agendas, their own challenges, all of them, their own elected officials that they're serving, their own public to serve. When there's a lot of federal dollars on the table, that's a tremendous incentive for folks to work together.
Can
I jump one thing on Blair's
please.
thing?
And then I want to ask you about fare collection in New Jersey versus New York.
Sure, absolutely. But Blair, I think one thing to just point out, and I think we agree on this, is that Amtrak does the through running and utilizes and has very long layovers at Penn Station, and figuring out how to knock down that number would both improve service for folks who are not necessarily just going from New York to Boston or Washington, but the interim places, which I've done quite a bit myself, and free up capacity at Penn Station. And I think we all agree that's probably the first place we ought to look to try and reduce dwell times.
No, completely. Like Amtrak schedules the Acela to pass the regional, for instance, the fast train to pass the slow train. At Penn Station, you're using the most expensive real estate, some of the most expensive real estate on the planet to have trains pass each other. That's a very bad use of resources. And that can be done anywhere along the line. That would be much cheaper. The number that just keeps going into my head, and I'm going to back up a second to this, is, and I will throw this out there, and we can debate this later. There are 11 platforms at Penn. Now, not all of them are perfectly through running capable. They would require junction everything. But what's 11 platforms? If you say a train every 10 minutes to each platform, that's 6 trains an hour. That's 66 trains an hour. That's more than the 48. That's what
we've done that number, and we've come out. We'll argue it over
and we've come out with different
beer.
numbers. That's fundamentally, it's different, different assumptions, different models. But yeah, even with a fairly conservative, dwell time of giving a 10-minute slot. I mean, that's...
We tried to build up that model looking at, as you acknowledge, some of the lines just don't run through. Some of them are stub ends on the north and the south of it. They're very narrow platforms. You have some real problems there. Again, we just don't think that it's gonna get you there.
Let me ask you, we're running out of a little bit of time here, but I just a question from the audience here. Andy Byford mentioned Crossrail as a model. Do you think New York and New Jersey commuter railroads need more efficient fare collection and staffing to get the full benefits out of through running? Tom, and then Polly and Blair.
Again, I'll say they need more efficient fare collection and staffing, period. And that's the thing. Look, it's a sad situation. I mean, right now, let me just, and maybe this New York audience, people don't realize what the situation is on New Jersey Transit. New Jersey Transit riders get a lot of free rides because there are too many people standing in the aisles for the conductors to come through and collect the tickets. They're losing a significant amount of money for that. What they need to do is move to a pre-boarding payment system, which they have in Secaucus. It's what we have at Jamaica and other places. And they need to move to something like that to speed that up. One other thing while I'm on New Jersey Transit, though, and again, talking about this capacity issue, I can't let this go without saying this. Today, there are, we've talked about this hypothetical potential passenger who wants to go from, New Rochelle to New Brunswick or something like that. And there are some people who want to do that. There are also today about 20,000 plus New Jersey commuters on the Raritan Valley Line, the Bergen and Main Line, other main lines, who do not have a one-seat ride into Manhattan during the peak hour because there's no capacity under the Hudson River. And so again, coming back to this issue, before we start figuring out how we could serve a kind of hypothetical future population that is a tiny minority of the commuter rail ridership around the region, we ought to think about what are you going to do? For Long Island Railroad, it's very clear. What we want to do is electrify the lines so that we can eliminate transfers for people on those lines. And in New Jersey, what we need is capacity under the Hudson River and capacity at Penn Station, so those people don't have to transfer in Newark or other places out in New Jersey. They could have the Raritan Valley Line runs one-seat rides during the off-peak, because they can't run them on the peak, because if they did, they'd be knocking off a Northeast Corridor train that currently has people standing in the aisles already on it. That is the kind of crush that they're having. And 6 years after COVID, we are back to that situation again in New Jersey.
We have a question. It's Disability Awareness Month, as many of you know, and a question here from the audience. Polly or Blair, will through running, in your opinion, affect accessibility to Penn Station, and how? Would expansion perhaps improve elevator availability?
Well, let me speak to this as a larger system thing, because I think as part of any through running goal, one of the most important things you can do to kind of lay the groundwork is actually build high platforms everywhere across the network. This is especially a problem in New Jersey, where there aren't enough. Now, high platforms are a massive, obviously, win for disability. People who use a wheelchair or who are otherwise mobility impaired can get on the train much faster. It also just speeds service tremendously. You can board and deboard a train much faster. And then this in turn, because you're not having so many varieties of equipment in Penn and other things and door configurations and things, actually does help speed and lower the dwell time at Penn too. And of course, anytime you look at refurbishing Penn Station, I think disability access has to be a huge part of that. Whether adding more elevators, adding a lot more, and making sure that this is a number one thing you're thinking about along, because that is not just a nice to have, that's a necessary to have.
Polly, thoughts on that?
So it's a great question, and look, I think one thing maybe all of us in this field can admit is it's taken too long to make this region's transportation system fully accessible, and a lot of folks in this room, I'm proud I've been part of it too, have been continually working on that challenge. And I would say this also a little bit in response to what Tom was saying about some of the one-seat rides in this region that people have also been waiting a very long time for, and that we haven't managed to do. This is maybe something obviously for you, Borough President, and for other elected officials. One thing New York elected officials are so good at, if this is the moment when we're going to do something big and transformational, setting your priorities and being part of that negotiation is going to be extraordinarily important. I would hate if we in this moment didn't tackle some of those things that Tom has been mentioning that have been, again, my time on the MTA board, what we know from our friends across the river in New Jersey, they've been long-standing, understandable complaints for big segments of folks who live in our region. And here's the chance, as we're thinking about this project, I think, to also ask ourselves, if what we're trying to do, if the goal of through running, in part maybe it's capacity, although some debate about how much capacity it's going to give us, but it's also to make a better regional transportation system. What else at this moment should we be getting in our regional transportation system? Full accessibility, of course, and I think as Andy mentioned, certainly I think the design will make some improvements there. But some of these other one-seat rides around the region, they've been on a lot of our to-do lists for generations, I would say.
Well, we've reached the end of our program. I would describe Tom as through walking, Polly as through running, and Blair as through sprinting. That's my assessment. But closing thoughts, Tom.
Sorry?
Closing thoughts.
Look, I think the point is we're at an inflection point and an opportunity to make what should be the greatest transit system in the world. We had a huge success with congestion pricing. We took a big swing and we won with it, and it's been enormously successful. And so we can do. I like to point out to people who kind of maybe don't have the perspective, that in the last 10 years, we opened the 7 extension, maybe 12 years now, I should say, 7 extension to Hudson Yards, phase 1 of 2nd Avenue Subway, Moynihan Train Hall, Lower Manhattan got rebuilt, and we connected the Long Island Railroad to Grand Central Terminal. Any one of those would have been the single biggest thing to happen from 1950 to 2000. So we are at the start, we are only at the end of the beginning of a generation of transit investments that are going to remake the New York metropolitan region and make this be the best city in the world 50 and 100 years from now. And so it's really exciting for us to have the opportunity to debate these things and where the priority should be and what we do. And I want to stress, I think Blair and I both agree on a lot more than we disagree on. And I love the give and take and the opportunity to be able to discuss these issues.
Thank you. Thank you. Polly?
All right, well, I'll jump in. I think, Tom, you've laid out a beautiful list of the things that this region has accomplished and that folks should be proud of, and the sense of possibility that we have to do more. I'll catch a theme, though, out of all those projects. They all involved a lot of dollars from Uncle Sam and a lot of partnership with the federal government. And I know that's hanging in the air a little bit about how that's going to work. And I just, again, particularly thinking about our elected officials, that's just such an important piece of this puzzle. If there are real federal dollars on the table, it sounds like there are, exactly how many and how much will have to be leveraged locally and at the state level is a question mark. But when there are real federal dollars on the table, that's our best moment to accomplish big things. And I think, as Tom's saying, we've accomplished some big things. We may have an opportunity to do that now. So good luck to all our elected officials, and all our advocates will be working to help you at this moment.
Blair.
Yeah, and let me go back to what Tom just said. It's all about capacity at the end of the day. That's really the issue. This is where it starts and ends. I think the worst thing that could come out of all of this is that we have a beautiful new, $8 billion or whatever Penn Station, and we're running the same service through it. Yeah. That would be a disaster. And I think the real issue that we talk about, and this is where we disagree on exactly how to get there, but is about making those investments in the region that we think through running is a linchpin of to actually make it all possible, but around electrification, speeding service, simplifying service, high platforms, making sure that our junctions are grade separated so that trains aren't interfering with one another. And these are all relatively small projects. There's not a mega project among the list I think I just put out there. Maybe if you try to do them all at once, but you can do these things over time. But we need to make sure that we are actually constantly investing in our transportation network. We are constantly trying to make it better. We are constantly improving service, frequency, speed for everyone across the region. And we think 311 is a big part of that, but I do think however it ends up, that is the most important part.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, each and every one of you. Thank you to our hosts, President Schubach and FIT. Thank you to our speakers, including Congressman Jerry Nadler and Rob Gottheim, Senator Bottcher, Assemblymember Simone, Senator Krueger, and Councilmember Wilson could not be here with us today. But thank you to Andy Byford for zooming in, and thank you for our panelists for zooming out and helping us understand this very complicated issue. Thank you so much.